Hey everybody, welcome to Big Wyoming. This is something new we're going to start doing. Kind of eventually it's going to evolve into a podcast, but right now it's just going to be kind of two guys shooting the breeze, talking about some of the things we've learned while we have hunted out west. And believe me, there's a lot that we've learned, and there's a lot still to learn. So my partner in crime here is Jason Langton, and Jason, I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
My role I've kind of figured out is go along with what Dustin says, and then afterwards explain why it was a bad idea. That's what I'll be doing here. I criticize everything we've done. Uh, we've gone hunting several times, and we've learned a lot. Like you said, there's a lot to learn. I'm not as quite involved outdoorsman as Dustin is yet, but I got a little background, mostly deer hunting in my lifetime and a little fishing here and there. And I guess a few elk trips and bear trips in there now is in our belt.
But yeah, those were more expensive camping trips maybe than actual hunting trips.
Yeah, a couple death marches in there, some wild animals, some crazy weather. Always stories to tell.
So I thought we'd start with maybe one of our successful hunts. That way we don't scare everybody off.
They come eventually. Yeah.
Yep. I think we sit down and put pen to paper a minute ago in 2017. We went on a bear hunt. And that was in Montana. It's an over-the-counter tag, a hunt that I think is accessible to everybody.
Yep, wilderness hunt.
Yeah,
well, I guess that one wasn't wilderness only, but that's where we went.
Yeah, that's where we went. There's always easier places, but
yeah, for some reason we don't like going there.
That's right.
Well,
so, why don't you start us out? Why don't you kind of tell how we started that hunt and go from there?
So this would have been your third trip to the bear hunt. I didn't buy a tag. I was just along for the ride to help spot and stalk and carry out the meat. Hopefully, if we got some. So let's see. That's about 19-hour drive for us to get there.
Yeah. Yep.
So scouting's kind of tough. I think we went to general same area you'd been to before, but we ended up in a couple spots that were new to us, which I've kind of held for most of our trips. That's something we I think one of our weaknesses that we keep tending to hit new unfamiliar spots instead of going back to areas we can get familiar with. But there's probably two sides of that debate. If the animals ain't there, then you need to be ready to move to another spot. So we went in, when was this? This would have been October, I believe.
Yeah, I think maybe even September. I think right around when the bow season started.
Yeah. So
because they were bow hunting elk when we were there.
Yeah, that's right. Yep, so we were in the Absaroka Beartooth Wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
Over a southeast of Livingston a little ways. What was that little town? Prairie?
Yeah, right around Prairie, Montana.
Yep. And then, the roads going up in there were very accessible, good roads. We saw some roads that were kind of sketchy and some people on some pretty big rigs driving up in some of those forest roads, but had a little camping spot that you knew about from before, pitched a tent. And I think from that first day, we were already out scouting a little bit.
Yeah.
A little in the evening, but
we kind of jumped in pretty fast. And we've experienced that on other hunts where that can be good and bad.
Yeah. Right.
After a 19-hour drive, I think getting a good camp set up and maybe just relaxing a little bit.
Yeah. We haven't been doing very good with that. We hadn't in the past. So we got set up. I think the weather was pretty mild starting out. It was, it was cool in the evening. We had one of those little buddy heaters in the tent. I don't remember how many canisters we bought. We bought several of them fuel canisters for it. So there we were, ready to go. And so so let's jump back a little bit. We weren't just a couple of complete newbies just grabbing a rifle and driving to Montana to go shoot some big animals. This wasn't our first rodeo. We hadn't gone 8 seconds yet either, but we've done this a couple times.
Yeah, I think so. It started a group of us. We all worked together, and I'm going to say that was 14, maybe 13 or 14. We did a big group elk hunt, and that's a whole nother video on its own.
It is, yeah.
But once I kind of dipped my toes in the water after that, I just had to go back.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, elk hunting was kind of unreasonable, especially as a solo or one other person. One is because, the first trip I didn't realize what I was doing. I knew didn't know what I was doing. Honestly, there was a fear of killing a big elk and getting it out with just 2 people, and it was cost prohibitive.
It was.
I mean, we had a combo tag that was, maybe at the time it wasn't $1,000, but I bet you now it's right around $1,000, if not more.
Yeah, and some we didn't realize. We knew going in that we weren't, I would say, prepared, but I don't think until you do it, you have a really good idea how unprepared you are.
No, not if you're not from the West. I mean, you have no idea. So I felt like the bear hunt was affordable. It was accessible and doable. And I looked at it kind of as an investment in experience, right?
Yep.
Working out some of my gear issues, getting to know these places. Like you talked about, we'd been there more than once. And yeah, I don't know. That's why I kind of chose a bear hunt. So we went in 14. I think we took 15 off. In 16, I got a bear tag. I went spring and fall. Spring with my wife, fall with my dad. Those were unsuccessful hunts, and to be honest with you, we didn't put enough effort. Maybe through Big Wyoming, you guys will get to know my wife, but we had a problem with Bigfoot and aliens when I was out there in the spring. They were around every corner. And then in the fall, when I went with my dad, we didn't know it at the time, but he probably had cancer then, and he had a real tough time getting around. So we walked a little bit, but more of it was just kind of driving the roads. And then didn't do anything in the spring of 17. And then the fall is when you and I went back out there.
Yeah. So you had going in, you had an area picked out. You had a camp spot already kind of pre-scouted, and at least a couple of spots you guys had looked. I think a little bit down below our camp, we found a trail that followed the creek a little ways, and this was a day or two in, we looked up and you found elk up above where we were camping at.
Yep.
I think your dad and you might have spotted that or started on that one, that first trip.
Yeah, we had gone kind of as far as we could go. He would wear out. He was having circulation problems, and we kind of went and spotted from that area, but we never saw anything. And what's interesting is when you and I went out, that was one of the areas where we saw the first bear we saw and where we saw the elk, and they were actually rutting at the time. So we were watching elk herd cows, chase satellite bulls off.
The satellite coming and going there. Yeah, we watched that for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
So my philosophy was a little bit different than yours. And that was because I had learned a hard lesson on that first trip that we didn't realize until much later, that we had picked one of the hardest mountain passes to hike over going in our first trip. So it was a bit of a death march for us,
Mm-hmm.
it was tough. It was real tough. And then, the trip out was kind of the same way. It was just a slog. And so what I did, I just put my head down and marched. And, I think you were there on the way out. Give me 10 more steps. So, it's 10 more steps going over that mountain. And so I had that mentality with our next trip, just we picked a spot up above our camp up the mountain. We're going to go spot. And I knew that's where we're headed. So I throw on the pack, throw, the scope and lower my head and march. Let's get there.
Yeah. And in fact, I think I reminded you that morning. So once we stepped out of the tent, we were hunting.
Yeah.
And that was different from our first trip. Our first trip was we had to get into the hunting unit.
That's right. We had at least 6 miles, I think, from where we parked before we were in a wilderness area. And we were pretty demoralized by the time we got there.
Yeah.
We just didn't have any idea what it was going to be like. So yeah, we started marching up there, and of course, here I am, head down, shoulders hunched, just marching. Let's get where we're going, and sure enough, what happens? Something comes out of the trees and cuts the trail right in front of us. I don't know. I'd say maybe 20 yards, something like that. And it turned out to be a young cub. And funny enough, I don't know. In retrospect, it's hard to say how big he was. It was just a kind of a black blur. I don't think it even occurred to us that it was a young enough that a mama bear would have been nearby. We were pretty fixated on him.
Yeah, that's something I've often thought about. I mean, we were probably pretty lucky it was the right type of bear. We were hunting in an area that has grizzly and black bear.
Right.
And that's something you got to do for Montana is you got to take an identification test, so
yeah, that's right.
You can spot the difference. But I would say that, I've seen, we've made some trips to Colorado. I've seen a couple bears, things like that. In a hunting situation, I'd say that's the first bear I'd ever seen.
Mm.
And I recognized that it was a small bear.
Yep.
But I told you, I think I was going to shoot it because I think, between our trip in 14, my 2 trips in 16, I was just tired of the well being dry. I had an opportunity.
Well, yeah, we got to get something to have a success before you get to what I call a hunt, where you're looking for that big, that mature bear or that mature elk, whatever you're going after. So,
right.
Yeah. So he went down through the trees. We lost him in the valley.
Mm-hmm.
We decided to go on up higher and spot for a while.
Yeah. So we set up, and I think we saw glimpses of that bear. He went over the ridge.
And I
never really saw him again after that.
And so one of the first lessons we learned was your gear prep. I don't know if you remember this. I was carrying the tripod. You were carrying the scope, the spotting scope. Neither of us had the adapter to mount it to the tripod. That was back in the truck still.
Yeah.
So we were spotting with the rifle scope and binoculars, and they weren't quite giving us the clarity looking across the valley where we thought that bear might have been.
Right. And that's something I've tried to get better at. So there's maybe a pro tip number one. Now I use my binoculars on a tripod. I got a spotting scope. My rangefinder actually has an adapter for a tripod. Yeah. I mean, I would own an adapter for every one of those. Don't waste the time trying to switch adapters, lose it.
Yeah.
Make sure everything's got an adapter on it and it's ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, we did that. Spent quite a while up there. I don't remember after that. I think we drove up a couple roads up to some of the dead ends, kind of seeing where some trails were.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was the same day that we went up on those hills that had all the down trees. That it was kind of a windy day.
No, I mean our basic strategy, and I need to look for some of these maps, see if they have any local here to Wyoming. And some of those National Geographic maps have closed logging roads.
Yeah.
and kind of our strategy was to find those closed roads, walk them, look for openings, and try to find feeding bears.
We were trying to get up high with a good view across valleys, and that road, there was a lot of trees down across that road. Oh, you remember that? We ended up trying to decide, well, maybe it's easier just to go straight up the side of the hill. It wasn't.
Yeah. There's just as many trees down on the side of the hill, wasn't there?
And without the benefit of a road to follow.
Right.
So that first night after the hunt, we were pretty tired. Had the little camp buddy did a decent job. I think this was a trip where we debated on buying the cots on the way, and we talked ourselves out of it for those tents. And end up on the ground. That might have helped, but
well, there's another reoccurring theme that we've had trouble with. So this campsite was vehicle accessible.
Yep.
There was no reason why we shouldn't have had cots or more amenities. Or
aside from that first trip we took, every trip after that we could have we could have brought a bed. We could have had a camp stove. We could have really been comfortable if we were thinking, but I don't know. We got that romantic notion of going out in the back country and sleeping under the stars and everything. And next day was a lot of moving around, trying to find some spots and spotlight scope and glass in the hillside.
I think there might have been maybe a couple days of that. Maybe
just kind of jumping around, trying different spots. And I don't know. I kind of have mixed feelings on it. Of course, I'm not an expert, but I kind of wonder, are we moving too much? Should we pick a spot and stay there all day, or I think we're going about half a day where we're going. But again, if they're not there, they're not there. You got to find them. And so I think it was that night. It was a really interesting night. The little camp buddy, I think, is that what it's called? Your little heater thing?
Yeah, I can't remember what they're called, but it's just a little propane heater, maybe a foot tall, foot wide.
Yeah, so it did real good the first couple nights. That night it quit on us. And I think I know why eventually, because I don't think we were getting a lot of good air circulation in that tent.
Yeah.
So that was a night we were, I don't know, by 2 or 3 in the morning, we started hearing some odd sounds.
Yep.
Some scraping. I laid there for a while listening to some scrapes on the back side of the tent, something on the front side. Then, thinking, maybe it's the wind, maybe it's mice or something rustling around out there. And then the tent shakes.
Yep. So I did the same thing. I was awake and I was hearing those noises. I think eventually I maybe asked if that was you or something finally broke the tension. And
you said, "Is that you making that sound?" I think, and I said, "No."
Yeah, and I knew it was a problem because you answered me so fast.
Yeah. And so then there was a kind of a final straw. I think I don't remember it was the front or the back. The tent shook pretty good.
The back of the tent.
Yeah. Yep. I always thought it was interesting. We grabbed our guns, our pistols instead of the bear spray. We went straight for the handguns.
Yeah.
I think we held, pointed in each direction. We kind of joked if we was with that group before, there'd probably been bullet holes all over the tent by that point.
Yeah.
I think we hollered, trying to scare off whatever might have been out there, and finally decided we better go out and check and unzip that front. And we were snowed in, snowdrift.
Yeah. Yep. So what had happened was there was so it's a big dome tent with the aluminum poles. It's a big Agnes. I can't remember which one it is, but it's a large tent. It has 2 rooms in it.
Yep.
So it had got enough snow on the back side that it actually bent the aluminum pole.
Yeah. And it was that real heavy wet snow that was accumulating. The rustling we're hearing was that snow sliding down off the side. And part of why we're so surprised is we had no indication it was going to snow. but
No, there was nothing, but it sure did.
I think it was probably 6 or 8 inches would be my guess. So I think we figured out that's why the heater kept kicking off, because all of our ventilation was shut off, covered up by that snow. So we went in town, got a hotel.
Yeah, I think we went and got coffee, talked to some guys down the hill, and ended up maybe staying in town that night. And I'd say
it's about 30-minute drive from where we were.
Maybe a little further.
Yeah.
But as far as the mentally, I think that might have been the lowest spot for me.
Yeah, I think you're right. But boy, I tell you, that tent or going and staying in a hotel, it was refreshing, just not, wouldn't expect that every time we go hunting, we'd go stay in a hotel, but something about that one, I think we kind of needed it, that reset.
Yeah. We'd been out a few days, so we had, and it's like you talked about, we had instant success. We spotted two bears on the first day, right? Maybe it was the same one. We could never verify. And then 2 days and nothing.
Yeah.
And then the whole landscape, there was no more green patches. There was no more.
Yeah. And I was trying to figure out how you hunt a bear. Well, they're looking for greenery, and
right.
Last hurrah before they, had to shut down for the winter. So yeah, the whole mountainside's covered in I'd say it's probably a good 4 to 6 inches, maybe, somewhere there. So I think that's when we came back and decided. We drove around a little bit, found I forget what that trail was called. There's a trail that goes down the valley, and we found up high where those guys on the side by side were coming and going out of.
Yep.
And we walked that way a little bit and decided there wasn't anything, it wasn't remote enough. I think there's just too much traffic there. So we went back and found the trailhead that we ended up finding. I'm not sure how we landed. I think, we've been looking at the maps and finding good paths. That trail would get us up to the top of a ridge. And we were thinking we get to the top of that and look over the backside.
Yeah, I think that was the idea. Another thing I'd been doing, was I'd been talking to a wildlife biologist.
Oh, that's right.
Yep. So I had talked to him before we went out on the fall bear hunt, and he, I think it's hyperphagia. The fall, the bears are eating anything. They're drinking a ton of water. They're going to be on the move all day. So we kind of felt good about just going anywhere. But then when that snow hit and we went to town, I made another phone call, because in my mind, every bear in the county split, right? Because there's 4 to 6 inches of snow on the ground, and they're not going to deal with it. And he kind of reassured us, that the bears didn't up and move.
Right.
They're maybe some of them will wait this out. Maybe some of them will find some spots on the north or south where the snow's not so deep.
Yeah.
So between talking to him and the motel, it was a little bit of a recharge, because mentally I was ready to chalk up another failed hunt.
Yeah, we were still kind of had the mindset, we don't know what we're doing. We're in over our head. So I think by the time we found the trail that we decided to go up, I don't know if you're wanting to divulge that on here or not.
No, I mean, we won't give. We pretty much told everybody where we're at in the Mill Creek area down by Frey, but.
So it was a good trail. There was a creek run, down the valley between it. And I think, Dustin, by the time we started up that trail, most of the snow had melted. There were still some of the trees.
And this would have been the day after the snowstorm. Yep.
And we stopped kind of low and looked up the hills, up that mountainside for, I don't know, a half hour, maybe an hour. Then decided we want to get up to the top. Let's get up to the ridge and look over the backside. And so it follows the contour of the mountain and comes out where there's kind of a finger sticks out back towards the south. And that the whole time that trail's winding up higher. We got higher and higher. In fact, the higher we got, there was still more snow on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time we got up there where that where we thought the ridge was, it was mostly tree lined.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot to look at on the backside. There wasn't much open.
Yeah. So we decided to go back on that where the trail wound around where the kind of ridge stuck out, pointed out. Let's just sit there and spot for the, let's just give it a day. And we got back down there and it started snowing again. It snowed pretty hard for 30 minutes or so where you couldn't hardly see the mountain across from us.
Yeah.
And we decided to wait it out. So,
well, I think you were the driving force on that waited out. And that's something I gotta get better at. Is I had almost succumbed to defeat at that point.
And honestly,
got past the snowstorm, and here was another one coming at us.
Yeah.
So.
And that is kind of uncharacteristic of the way these hunts go, because usually I just kind of go along with what you wanted to do. Yeah, let's go here. Sure, I'm along for the ride, but this time I kind of held out. Let's stay here. Let's just stay here and spot. We got more days.
Yep.
So we split up. Well, we were same spot, but I went on one side of the ridge. You stayed on the other on that finger, so we could spot two different directions. And I told you I was just going there so I could take a nap, but I had the spot and scope. And that day, I do remember we kept hearing those snaps. You remember we kept thinking there was gunshots going off all around us.
Yep.
And we were thinking people are blasting elk and bear all over the valley. And here we are seeing nothing. It turned out it was a lot of those dead trees up in there. It was under their own weight was snapping. I don't know what time of the year. I think there was wind maybe was pushing them and they just had enough and were snapping. But so finally, I don't know how long we sat there. I spotted a bear across the valley from us on a rock slide on a washout over there.
Yep.
And from that distance, it's kind of hard to judge how big he was. And honestly, I've learned that across the valley, it's kind of hard to judge how far it was even. I think it turned out to be 400 yards, 375, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I thought it was a little over 4 by the time we were done.
Man, so I had you come over. We pointed him out, and you didn't think about it for very long.
No, I didn't. Okay, so from a lawful standpoint, it didn't have any cubs with it.
That's right. Yes.
And to me, so I mentioned earlier, I saw that first bear, I knew it was a small bear.
Yeah.
I thought this was a big bear.
Yeah.
Not having any experience at spotting or anything, I could tell it was bigger than the first one, and I really thought this was a big bear, and it didn't have any cubs with it.
And he was he was acting like a lethargic big bear, taking his time, wandering down the hillside, looking for something to eat. Some we didn't talk about then, so we're talking a little over 400 yards, somewhere in that neighborhood. Your rifle, what you were shooting, what you brought to shoot this guy with?
I had a Tikka 30-06.
This was kind of your tried and true deer rifle, wasn't it?
You'd used it. I've had a lot of luck with that rifle. It's kind of the only one it's the one I always grab.
Yeah, I think you had almost decided up to the point we left that you were going to use a 308.
Yeah,
I think in the end you grabbed that rifle, and I think you had one magazine of hand loads, and then a spare that you'd bought some store bought with the same grain bullets in them.
Yeah, they should have been pretty close, is what the thought was.
Yeah, so you glad we ranged him 425, maybe somewhere in that neighborhood.
I think so.
So I had to spot and scope in on him. I was zoomed way in, which turned out to be a problem a little bit later.
Yeah.
And I think you were using your pack frame for your rest.
Yep.
And you're just over my shoulder, so the muzzle blast would deafen me. Actually, I think your adrenaline was high enough that you weren't directly behind me, kind of up above and to the side. But I think adrenaline was enough that it didn't really affect me much, but
I
I
haven't seen any lasting damage.
I seem to be able to hear most what is said to me. So he said, "I'm taking the shot."
Yep.
I think the first shot was a little bit high.
Yeah, I think I had ranged it, dialed what it told me, and then I think he called that first shot high.
Yep, about a foot maybe off his shoulder.
Yep. And then I think I adjusted. I think I dialed it down a click,
Mhm.
and then shot again.
Yeah, and I think that second shot was what hit him. I remember him jumping, like something stung him, kind of how it felt to me. I could kind of see the fur ruffle, and then kind of twitch.
Mm-hmm.
And he took off running downhill.
Yep.
Well, shit, we must have missed. Or heck, we
No,
must have.
I think we know. I mean, I feel like it was a hit. It was an obvious hit. He turned and bit at himself, or
Yeah, that's right. He did. Like something had gone. Yeah, that's right.
something bit me.
Yeah. So
Uh,
yeah, so from that point he was running downhill and I was trying to track him and I never zoomed back out on the
Yep.
scope. So I was having a hard time keeping him in my sight in my picture. And what magazine holds 4 rounds, I think, with
Yeah.
one in the chamber.
Yeah.
So you squeezed off several shots as he was going down the hillside.
Yeah. If you're a viewer watching this, listening to it, imagine the biggest circus you can at that point, what it was. I think you were in the scope screaming, "I lost him." For me at that point, I thought I had a wounded bear on the run. It was a free
Yeah.
fire zone,
Yeah.
which was useless trying to hit a running bear.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then essentially we got to the point where the bear was out of sight. I had maybe 2 bullets left. We both didn't know, what he went. We were discussing things, and I remember you said, "Be quiet and listen." And we heard, what I know now after some research is the death moan, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Well, that filled the valley up once we heard that. I mean, you could hear it plain as day.
Yep. But in my mind, it was an angry bear.
Right. Yeah. So I think we gave it a little while. I mean, which we gave it more time than it needed because we had plenty of ground to cover before we got close to it.
Yeah. So here's a Flatlander pro tip number 2. We talked about some things earlier. It's really getting your bearings before you take off after an animal.
That's right. I had marked on my GPS. I had one of them little handheld GPS things. I had the spot we were sitting marked. They didn't do it much good once we left that spot.
No, but I mean, some things to think about are, what elevation am I at? So I need to be on that other hill at the same elevation at least, if you were shooting above your head or below it.
And I kind of thought to the fact too, if we had some marker ribbon to put up where we were, and we could look back to where we shot from and kind of get our back from there. Because once terrain changes, once you change your perspective.
Yeah, and I think kind of surprised to me even though we had headed up that trail, once we headed back down it, there was another fold.
Yeah.
That I didn't realize we had to go through before we could get over to where that bear was. So, we kind of shot over a ridge onto another ridge.
So I think he went up behind that fold that we didn't see. Mm-hmm. So there's pro tip number 2 is try not to shoot a bear on a rock slide if you can help it.
Yes. Yeah, with a sticker bush.
Boy, it was a rough. We pretty much made our way to the bottom, about where that stream was trickling to the corner of the trail.
Yeah.
And started making our way up to where we thought we saw him last. I think we end up a ways above him, where we end up going to start hunting or to start trying to find him. And we split up, kind of marching back.
It was close. It was it was a lot closer than I want to admit that we did not find that bear. So, you know,
Yeah.
and you go from the elation and the adrenaline dump of making the shot, thinking you
Yeah.
got an animal, to getting up there, climbing this hill, searching around, not having any luck.
Feeling like you've wasted it, lost your bear.
Yep.
And I was exhausted by the time we got up there, scrabbling over that rock, climbing over fallen trees, and I was feeling pretty demoralized at that point. And I guess something we didn't mention was a lot of those fallen trees was due to a fire, forest fire. So there's a lot of stumps and trees that the burnt remains of those are the exact color of a black bear's fur.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you're spotting and glassing, everything looks like a black bear from a distance. And then when you're up close, nothing looks like a bear when you're trying to find the bear that you just shot.
Yeah. I mean, I had gotten to the point where, I wasn't finding any blood.
Yeah.
I didn't find anything. And my thought was, I'm going to start gridding, right? I'm going to go over this way. I'm going to go down 15 feet. I'm going to come back because I thought I was too high or I'd gone past him at that point.
Yeah.
So I started over and I got about halfway over on my first line. And then sure enough, kind of wedged underneath the log.
Yeah.
There he was.
It was one of those burnt logs too.
Yep.
That, he blended right in with it. Yeah.
So I mean, it honestly, it was that close. I'm going to tell you, I would have come back the next day,
Yeah.
and looked some more, especially maybe you would have had some birds or something come in, but yeah, that night, I think we were pretty close to not finding him.
Right. It was getting to the sun was behind the mountain by
Mhm.
that point. We started daylight to do the cleanings. We did the gutless method, right? Quartered him.
Yes.
Him.
So, split him up the middle, took the paws and the head, and then I took the quarters, the back straps, everything we could get off of it at that point.
And I guess we should say, I mean, we admired him for a bit, and he had a great, beautiful coat on him.
Yeah.
Like, no mange, no scarring or anything, and he wasn't as big as we'd hoped, but I don't think either of us cared at that point.
No, there was there was a little ground shrinkage, but again, for somebody that's never spotted or judged bear,
Yeah.
but as far as the coat, I mean, you're right. He didn't have hadn't been rubbing any fur off. He looked real good.
Yeah.
Good, healthy bear.
Yeah, he looked good.
Yep.
So pro tip number 2, we had drank most of our water by the time we got to that bear.
Yeah.
So it's work, cleaning them, cutting them up, loading them in our packs. I think we used the last of our water maybe to wash some blood off our hands or something. I don't recall. There wasn't much water left at that point because
Right.
you get it up, and so make sure you got enough water. I think you bring more than you think you're going to need because you'll go through it. Those up the mountain air, I think you dehydrate quicker than you expect.
So, I mean, to put this in perspective, we're 1.5 miles, 2 miles.
Yeah, which doesn't seem that far, except at least a half mile of that was across that broken up
Right.
rock and fallen trees and stuff. So I'm trying to remember. I think you had the head. You put the head in the cape,
Mm-hmm.
and a quarter, maybe 2 quarters, and I had the rest on my back.
Maybe I think I had the head, cape, a quarter, and the back straps.
Yeah.
And you would have had the 3/4.
3/4. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that was really, so I had done some training, loaded up a pack, carried some stuff.
Yeah.
I could walk a gravel road in Kansas on flat ground with a heavy pack, no problem.
That's right.
But that was something else.
Downhill.
Down.
Right. Is a whole story. Yep. So we had enough light to get back to the trail. I do remember that. It was
Yeah.
getting dusk and we were losing light. I had I don't remember if you had. I had walking sticks.
Yeah, I think we both did.
And they helped. I definitely recommend those if you're carrying a load, and watch where you're putting your feet, because I stepped on
Well, rotten log. Yeah.
yep, rotten log, and it collapsed under me, and I took a tumble. And I'm sure your thought was, my bear. But
I'll be back. I'll be back for you, Jason. I've got to get this to the truck.
but I recovered all right. That's kind of eye opener,
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, we've seen on previous trips looking up the mountainside, and a guy, you see a headlight coming down a mountainside where there's no trail, so it can be done. But I don't recommend it. It was dark by the time we got to the trail.
Yeah.
So here we are with fresh meat on our backs, and biologists warned you about grizzlies in the area.
Yeah, that's right. The
That was
biologist told us to be sure what we were shooting because
Yeah.
they'd seen a grizzly with cubs.
And I think that was part of our thinking too, worried about leaving him was, when we come back and find a grizzly on him.
Right.
So we spent the rest of that walk, probably a mile on that trail, hollering, "Hey bear, hey bear," the rest of the way out, trying to make as much noise. And I think now, Dustin, one of us, did we both have good headlights, or one of us headlights was dead?
I think you just had a good headlight.
Okay.
Because you were in the lead and I was behind you.
And so trying to keep my head on the trail so you could see where you were going behind me. And then I do remember at one point where you kind of a bottleneck and there's bushes on each side. You got to kind of squeeze through, and a grouse,
Yep.
fluttered up right in front of us, just like in those scary movies. And life flashed before your eyes for a minute there, but made it back to the truck and shed that weight. And the first thing we did was grab a jug of water.
Yeah, that was one of the best feelings ever, was getting that weight off your back. And then we sat there on a tailgate and chugged water.
Yeah, that was and let's see what we do. I think we had the cooler in the back of your truck.
Yep.
I think we went back to the hotel, put them in a trash bag, sealed up that cooler real good, had a lot of ice in it, and went and slept and got up good and early to go find taxidermists.
Yeah.
I got taken care of.
Yep. So that was in Livingston. Found I got his card. I'll see if I can put it in the description. Great taxidermist. He let's use his freezer for the meat so we can make the trip home with some solid frozen meat.
That's right.
And man, he was great. He told us what a great looking bear it was. A few years old is what he thought it was. Wasn't bad at all. Made me feel really good about it.
Yeah.
But that's another thing from being out of state at that time. That was a whole day.
Yeah, it sure was.
We didn't meet him till noon is when he was available. Transferring the meat, getting the hide to him.
The game warden had to come out.
Right.
That's right. Yeah.
Game warden had to come out and record it. So for you guys there that are hunting to the last day and pressing to the end, you've got to leave time for all those legalities to happen.
Yeah, you're probably talking a day to make sure you got the ability to process your animal, unless you're just going to pack it nice and drive it home. And this is another one of those kind of tips for the Flatlanders. When you bring a bear back to Kansas, most of your local meat lockers don't really know what to do with it.
Yeah,
and you know how to take care of meat and mix it and stuff, but it's, you don't see very many bears in Kansas.
No. So we had a pile of sausage made out of it, the local locker in Kansas. I wish I would have. So the deal was we didn't leave it out there because they're in the middle of an elk season.
Yeah.
And it was just the bow season. Then they have the rifle season. So by the time they switch everything over to get to my bear, it would have been, maybe a new year by then.
Right. And that was already Well, it was what, a good 6, 8 months before you got the pelt back.
Oh, it was a year before I got
Was
the
it a
hide.
year? Was it a
Yep.
year? Yep. So
Yep.
yeah. So I'd say a few lessons learned is you need to accept that you're never as prepared as you think you are. Even these, professional guys that, Ranella and oh gosh, some of the names are failing me right now. These guys work out all year long, and do marathons. They lift weights and exercise. And I think you and we probably threw some weight in our pack and went for some long walks here and there.
Right.
Didn't really give ourselves much cardio, And then again, we roughed it more than we needed to. Now that's not to say that roughing it doesn't work. There's a lot of guys are hiking everything on their back out in the wilderness, but you got to know your limits, and it's a mental game. If your heart's not in it, then it's not going to work for you. You're going to get
Right.
defeated before anything ever happens.
Yeah, and I see it more. The more you can make yourself comfortable at camp,
Yeah.
I think the better you are as far as spending time out in the woods.
Yeah. If you're not backcountry hunting, there's no reason not to take care. Take your
Yep.
pack, take some chairs, take a bed or whatever, cook some food, build a fire.
So, and maybe you'll correct me. I mean, I did it for a year and came up empty, but I'll be the first to tell you that I didn't put the effort in it that it
Mhm.
needed. I think a Western bear hunt is over the counter accessible,
Yep.
and I think you could fill a tag pretty easy, maybe even without scouting.
Yeah. Yeah. Some determination, equal parts determination, patience, and a little bit of fortitude, keep looking, be ready to work. They're there. I mean, what every local ever tells you, the bears are everywhere. If you see one,
Yeah.
just shoot, which of course we don't recommend. Buy a tag, do it legally.
Yeah.
But the way everybody talks is they're just everywhere. They're a nuisance. So they also aren't going to come to you. You got to go find them.
Right.
It's doable. It's accessible. I'd say even with our other hunts that, with the elk hunts, you just got to stick it out, keep looking,
I think there's a little more complication with the deer and elk, and really my perspective has changed a little bit. I've been scouting some deer
yeah,
here, and I don't think I could just drive out here and find a piece of public land and shoot a deer.
yeah,
But I do believe somebody could drive out here, get a bear tag, go to the bighorns, go to the Absarokas, and within a week's time, at least see a bear, if
yeah.
not harvest a bear.
Yep, that's true. I agree with that. They're there.
So I think it's an excellent get your feet wet type of hunt.
And it's an affordable over counter tag to buy. I think even it's gone up a little bit, but even now they're just a little over $300.
Mhm.
For an out of state person.
Yeah, I think out of state you're around I'm going to say 380 for Montana. I'm not sure what it is here in Wyoming.
Yeah,
but it's no more than that.
And actually, I'm of course the last couple of years plans have been pretty up in the air on just about everything, but I'm interested in bear hunt again now. I've learned a lot more since then. There's some pretty interesting history to bear hunting, and I mean that used to be the thing. There was back in the early colonial days when they were still exploring Appalachians, they preferred bear meat over elk and deer back then. So I don't think we got to really experience the full value of the meat.
No, like I said, we had sausage, breakfast sausage made. I had spicy and regular.
Yeah.
I used it in some chili. I used it for biscuits and gravy, until we kind of used it up that way.
Yeah, you gave me some of it. I used, I think I made some lasagna and maybe some kind of spaghetti or something with it. Yep.
Yep.
So, uh, I think, so probably the overall lesson learned is don't lose hope. You know, you just gotta set your mind, determine that you're gonna do this.
Yeah.
And there's so many opportunities to give up came up for us, or to decide this is hopeless. It's not going to happen. We might as well go home. And we didn't. I mean, that's why we succeeded in this case. We didn't let these little setbacks defeat us.
Right.
And we've had examples in the past where it did.
I was gonna say we got plenty of examples where we're overwhelmed with the different style of hunting, the different terrain. It's easy to do, and then and I do believe for the other species, a scouting trip is worthwhile if you can
Yeah.
swing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I was ecstatic with this hunt, and I can't thank you enough. You just came and tagged along, and one is you kept me out there when it got bad, and two is you helped me carry that bear out.
Yeah.
The solo trip, that would have been 2 trips solo,
Right. Yeah.
deep into the night. It was dark when we got back. I'd have been there all night.
Right. It's worth any opportunity to get out in the mountains. I'm always game for that. It's always worth it. Yeah.
So how long we been going here?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I put my glasses on to read. Get the crazy glare here on the screen. We've been going a while. I don't have time. You should have timer on yours, but
All right. Well, I mean, I think that's kind of a good wrap up spot. Is
yeah.
we kind of covered the hunt, some of the challenges that we had. Again, this is the idea. This is that people can listen to us, maybe learn a little bit from our experiences, good and bad,
Yep.
and it'll help us be better hunters too.
Yeah. I mean, we're not professionals here. We're learning this, trying to find some adventure. I mean, that's how this whole thing started, right? That first trip,
Right.
sitting around talking about it, and we decided, why not? Why can't we just do this? Let's get a bunch of us together and buy some tags and go do it. I mean, eventually you just gotta decide, is it something you want to do? Pull the trigger, go do it. It wasn't successful, and it was one of the hardest things I ever did, that first trip. But it's one of my fondest memories too.
Yep. I think it was you that said it's like childbirth for a woman.
Yeah.
At the time,
Yeah.
it may not be very fun, but it's some of your fondest memories. So
Yep. You can't wait to do it again.
yeah. Well, I think we'll wrap up with that. If anybody's got any questions or comment, please put them below. We need you to like, subscribe. We're going to try to do a series of these. We got a range of topics from, what Big Wyoming is, about the deer hunting we're going to do now. I think we probably got an antelope hunt coming up next year. We're going to try to talk about. Jason is a master knife maker. I want to talk to him about that sometime. We're just going to cover the gamut. If there's anything you guys want to hear in particular, let us know.
Yep.
Thanks for taking the time to watch this. Thanks for taking the time to like and subscribe. We'll talk to you later.
All right.